Mark Roloff. I'm the city manager for the city of Oshkosh, and I want to thank you for coming today. We're going to be doing a brief presentation on the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, funds that are available from the city of Oshkosh. And so I'm just going to do a brief presentation and then kind of open it up for questions and answers. Andy Radig from Oshkosh Media is here with microphone in hand. We are broadcasting this over our Oshkosh Media channel. So for those who are watching, we want them to have the ability to hear your questions. So please, raise your hand, and Andy will go to you, and pretty much I think we'll be able to get through your questions. We're trying to do this no more than an hour. We did a similar session last night, and we were done in 45 minutes. So, and that got everybody a chance to ask at least one question. So if you've got a question that I haven't answered through the presentation, feel free to ask it. If it's more specific and we end a little early, I'm going to be sticking around anyway to help answer any questions you might have, and Andy will as well. You've been signing in, so I appreciate that, and I think Andy also distributed some frequently asked questions. We've gotten a lot of questions from people, so we've just been compiling them so you have that type of information. But I want to go into the presentation and just see where we take it from there. And really, this is meant to be, a good exchange. Any question you might have is probably relevant for many other people. So appreciate you just asking questions so we can get as much information out as possible. So the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, came from the federal government in 2021 in response to the COVID crisis. And if I can just get that thing rolling. It is not cooperating with me, and I swear I turned it off last night. Yep, okay. So the American Rescue Plan Act was really to address the economic impacts caused by COVID-19 with assistance to households and small businesses. That is what the federal regulations discuss. So everything you see here is about what was permitted by the American Rescue Plan Act. So one of them was to assist nonprofits in impacted industries, including tourism. So this, why you hear a lot of you are with nonprofit entities, represent nonprofit entities or groups. Replace lost revenue to the public sector, not really relevant to this discussion. Premium pay for eligible essential workers, remember that term from a few years ago? That was all part of ARPA. And then invest in water, sewer, stormwater, and broadband infrastructure. So those are some of the items that the feds authorized. Yeah, Andy, it's not being cooperative, so you may have to park there. So the city's allocation of ARPA funds from the federal government, and we received those directly from the federal government, we received approximately $20.5 million. After some discussion, the council had allocated 75% of those funds for infrastructure purposes, city infrastructure purposes, and staff through our capital improvement program are doing that. But they also said that 25%, or roughly $5.1 million, was to be used for local entities for non-infrastructure purposes. So the term that council used was non-infrastructure. But as I said in the previous slide, the ARPA funds also specifically mention nonprofits. So nonprofits is definitely assumed in that allocation from the council. The council has already awarded nearly $2.8 million of that amount. So we've got $2,350,000 roughly remains to be allocated out of our allocation for this purpose. So when we put this together almost 3 years ago now, we took a look at what short-term goals we wanted to achieve and what long-term goals we wanted to achieve. They aren't necessarily in conflict with one another. In some cases, they're very much compatible with one another. But as you're considering an application, I think it's very important to keep these things in mind and to identify ways in which you can say, yes, this does meet some of the short-term or long-term goals. Are you necessarily going to qualify for all of that, qualify using all the criteria? Not necessarily, but that's not going it's not going to disqualify you either. So just keep that in mind. One of the things, especially with COVID, was that helping those with immediate needs. After 3 years, I think many of you can agree with me that that term immediate needs has evolved, and one of the things that the council felt was important, that we kind of knew that there would be some delayed reactions or delayed impacts of COVID. And I think we've seen that a lot. And I see a few heads nodding in the audience. You know what I'm talking about. Certain things have started to come out and are still, in some cases, coming out. So immediate is a relative term. So use it how it best relates to you. I am so pleased with the turnout. I can tell you I did these identical sessions summer of '21, and I probably had a total in 3 sessions that's less than this entire session right here, right now. So I really appreciate the fact that you've taken an interest in this. But you know what immediate needs are because you're hitting them every day. Those directly impacted by COVID-19, we said directly, but I think directly is a relative term. So I think if you can explain how COVID-19 has impacted the demands on services or your clients, customers, however you want to refer to the people that utilize your services, I think telling that story is really important. Of course, they have to be compliant with the federal ARPA regulations, and the first slide that I talked about kind of goes over those things. I say we wrote politically acceptable to the council and community. The council is a political body of the city of Oshkosh, and they're responsible to the electors, to the community. So it's got to be something that they feel the community wants and needs. And so you telling the story about how your organization may see the need, and maybe the council's not aware of it, making them aware that they should make it an acceptable thing, it's you telling that story. Anything you can do to leverage any proposed ARPA funds with other revenue sources. And there's an old trick that many of you probably already know from dealing with grants, that the more you can demonstrate that you have other funding sources available, and I always say, you know, the denominator needs to be as big as possible, where, you know, if you've got a project that you're working on, explaining how this request fits in with a much larger picture. And it's not your organization's entire budget, but if you're working on a project and you've got in-kind contributions or other resources that you're putting into it, don't be shy about talking about those things, because you're not giving yourself enough credit. You may be asking specifically for this item, you know, an item, a capital item, or you know, some assistance from a staffing standpoint, or whatever that might be. But if you just ask for that and give no context to it, you're not telling your story, and then also you're not demonstrating that you in fact are leveraging funds. So be very aware of that. Our staff at the city have a program that we get some federal monies from the Community Development Block Grant Program. That program has existed for 50 years now. And part of it is demonstrating that you are leveraging these funds and using other funds. This is not the only source of revenue for whatever you're proposing to do. And then the last one is about avoiding duplication of effort with other agencies. So, you know, tell us a story about how you're working with other entities, or how what the work you're doing may be different from somebody else's work in the community that may be similar, if you can distinguish that. And then we know there are other ARPA funds out there. You may not be aware there are ARPA funds, but we'll know. And a couple of examples. The state has trickled down a lot of money neighborhood improvement programs. The county received about $10 million for that. That's ARPA money. The county has its own ARPA money, and you may hear the term Spirit Fund. That's the county's program, but those are ARPA funds. So we want to make sure that we're being as judicious as we can with our ARPA funds, so that, and you may hear the term double dipping, and I'll just say it out there, but we want to make sure that we're trying to use our ARPA funds with everybody being able to benefit from these. So if you have gotten some county Spirit funds, ARPA funds, or the neighborhood improvement that the state does, you've already dipped into that pool. So you either need to demonstrate that this is something completely different than that other program. That would be helpful. But those are some of the short-term goals that we had. Whoops. Now it's working, Andy.
Okay.
All right. Long-term goals. We kept this a lot in mind as we were developing these 3 years ago. Alignment with the city's strategic plan goals. The city strategic plan is on our website. You're certainly welcome to look at it. I think the most relevant parts of our strategic plan that relate to work that you do, even though you may not be a city entity, you're very much in alignment with things we do. Economic development is one example. Now, most people think about economic development, they think about support to businesses, and that's certainly a relevant use, but economic development, particularly after COVID, we use a lot of terms about workforce development in economic development these days that, frankly, 10 years ago, we weren't talking much about. But I've oversimplified economic development in explaining it this way. We're either looking for jobs for people, think back 2008. We needed jobs for people. Now we need people for jobs. And work that you do, getting people back into the workforce through some of the programs you provide, things you can do. And that includes things like daycare. We know that's a barrier to people participating in the workforce. We know that transportation is a barrier to people participating in the workforce. And I don't want you to be limited by what I just said. I want you to think about things that you are already doing that are allowing people to participate in the workforce because of services that you provide. I think it's very important. So that's just economic development. We also have strong neighborhoods in our strategic plan, which is, and housing is another important part of our strategic plan. So think about those things as you think about how you align with city strategic plan goals. Of course, we want to see some long-term visible impact. Any of these things are about investments and getting return on that investment. So getting some long-term visible impact is important. Long-term benefit to the individuals as well as the community. So, along those lines of a long-term visible impact, to the degree you can show how you're providing long-term benefit to people that you serve. And I know most of the folks here today are probably here because they serve a certain clientele, and if you can demonstrate how you're giving them long-term benefit, whether that's housing stability or enables them to address mental health issues that will help them be more self-sufficient. Those are all important things, so don't be shy about those. And then one of the things that I personally had put in there, and this was right at the beginning of ARPA, and it was recognizing that the older you are, the less you're going to be paying this back. It's going to be our kids, our grandkids, and our great-grandkids. They're going to be paying this back. That's not making a comment on ARPA as a public policy, but it's a reality of somebody's going to be paying this back. And it's not going to be a 63-year-old guy like me. It's going to be younger people. And the long-term relief to those repaying ARPA funds in the future. So the more we can help other generations that will enable them to be more economically secure, that's certainly another benefit as well. So those are some of the goals that we had, both long-term and short-term. So we have an application that's online, and you can see some of this that I'm going to be explaining, but I wanted to give you a little background so you understood some of the logic of this. But there is going to be a preference for projects that can get all their funds expended by December 31, 2024. It is not a requirement, but I want to explain that so you understand it and why it's so important. I think we can all agree that we want to make sure as a community that we take full advantage of these ARPA funds. Even if you may not directly benefit from some of those funds, or your organization may not receive it, we want to be sure that we've invested all this. The council said 75% of ARPA funds are for infrastructure. They didn't say 74.5%. They said 75. I want to make sure every nickel gets spent on infrastructure that council allocated. Similarly, I want to make sure the non-infrastructure funds get paid. So I want to just explain a scenario. Let's say you apply for funds, it's going to involve some matching funds, and you got to go out there and do some fundraising. And you come back to me on January 2nd, 2025 and say, Mark, I'm sorry, we're not going to be able to meet our fundraising effort, we're not going to be able to use the funds. Here's, symbolically, here's the money back. You've just given the money back to the federal government because we can no longer use it. We need to have it allocated by December 31. But I need to keep an ongoing dialogue with you, and you need to keep an ongoing dialogue with me on how you're doing. If you get allocated funds, we need to know that it's for its intended purpose, because we can't change the scope of the allocation in January of 25. So that means, let's say you get a grant to do X, and you discover, well, we may not be able to do it. You need to come and see me. We either need to take the funds back and reallocate to somebody else, or how can we amend our agreement to make sure that you can still use it? And then I can do it before December 31, 24. That's why it's important. If you come in and say, I'm going to have it all spent, then I don't have as much to worry about with you on that. But it's vitally important that the definition that the feds are still evolving with, which is another frustrating part, their definition of allocated has changed, and it's very frustrating to me. So the safest thing for me to do is say, have it spent. If you can't have it spent, and if you're making a multi-year request, I understand, some of these programs may take more time, but please explain it in your application and how you will spend it, and that you'll use it for its intended purpose, so that we aren't turning this money back when we could have given it to one of you others in the crowd. I mean, just so think about it collectively. I know you're here for your own individual organization. That's your job, to advocate for those groups, and that's what I love about you guys. But think about us collectively as well. So that's why I'm beating the drum on this one. And if there are follow-up questions with it, happy to answer them. Priority will be given to requests that are focused on capital or non-operating needs. It's not saying that operating costs are forbidden, and I'm happy to tell you where we allocated essentially our first round of money. Most of it was capital. But the idea behind capital is it does a couple things. Number one, capital is typically larger, and it's one-time things that will last for a long time. Again, long-term benefit. Operating costs, you're going to need to effectively explain how you're going to be able to sustain your organization if you are asking for operating funds, or how these operating funds will help bridge through a gap that your organization or your clients, your people who use your services, need to use those services at this given moment in time to get them through. And that's where the immediate needs and things that have evolved since COVID, and now you're just starting to see those impacts. So priorities for capital are non-operating, because we don't have ARPA 2. When ARPA's gone, it's gone. And so we don't want to put an organization in a position where then they don't have a plan post ARPA funds. So please think that through. Agencies that have made previously applied, I recognize a couple faces, or if I don't recognize your face, I recognize your organization. Just because you applied and didn't get funds last time means absolutely nothing. you may reapply. I welcome you to reapply. If you received funds in the last go-round, I encourage you to reapply. I would say you're better off asking for something different, a different program that has evolved over time. And that's certainly okay. And then, of course, just the applications are due to my office by 4:30 on Friday, March 1st. I've been asked this question, how soon and everything. I think the current council, whose term ends in the middle of April, would like to get as much of this out as possible before then. Not necessarily the check written, but their approval, so that we've got 3 brand-new council members are going to be seated because the 3 incumbents are not running. So they want to make sure that they have their knowledge base that they can help do these things. If there's any money left, not allocated, I could very well see a 3rd round, but our timeline is going to be extremely short for all the reasons I just stated. The whole December 31, we got to allocate it. And I assure you, because I've told you this, I'm not going to leave money on the table. And I know I have departments that have many infrastructure needs, and I can take that 25% and quickly move it over, but I don't want to do that. So I need your help in telling the best story you possibly can, so we can say, okay, this is an appropriate use of ARPA funds. There's an unmet need in our community. And we know that we don't provide every service. We know that the county and the human services group that they have, they don't do everything. You as nonprofits meet certain needs in the community, and you do it very effectively. I just need to know more of that story. So the application, I said, is online, and you can submit it electronically, mail it to our office, City Hall Dropbox. As long as you get it to us by March 1st, you're okay. But one of the things I want to tell you about is if in reviewing your application there are questions and maybe some things that I think might help improve your application, we're going to sit down with you. This is not a one and done. This is not a pass-fail. We're not looking for reasons to say no. We're looking for a couple things. Number one, to know what community needs are out there that we're not hitting on. I have typically brought somebody from my community development department along with me just to get a feel for what community needs are out there that we may not be able to necessarily provide assistance to in a financial standpoint, but sometimes we do. We have our community development block grant program. Some of you may have tapped into that before, some may not have, but we have a community development block grant program. And then there are also other groups and groups in the city, in our community that are out there, and to the degree you're not familiar with them, we want to help you partner. We also want to know about your partners. Who should we be partnering with? Who do we need to know about? I think this is a wonderful opportunity for us to be better connected and engaged with you. And that's why I'm so encouraged. If you don't get a nickel of ARPA money, but we don't have an engagement, I'm going to be disappointed, because we need to know more about this. And this is something that council has absolutely asked me to do, to be more engaged in the community. So I really appreciate the fact that you're here. I want to learn more. We want to learn more about services you're providing. So there's, I think the previous slide, you can submit it to that city MGR email address at oshkoshwi.gov. You can also have questions or comments. After you leave today, you get a brainstorm of an idea and a question, please send it to ARPA comments at oshkoshwi.gov. Andy monitors the ARPA comments one, and you aren't going to be sending it to the wrong mailbox if you send it to city MGR. I'm not going to, say, oh, you've broken the rules, shame on you. It's really more about Cammie, my administrative assistant, wave Cammie in the back. City MGR is Cammie. Cammie will get your email to somebody. So, please get your questions and everything. Cammie will be the person that will receive your application, and we'll circulate it internally to get reviewed. And like I said, we may follow up with you at the meeting to learn more about it, but it won't be, well, your application's rejected. It's more, here are things you can do to make your application tell a better story. And that's what we want to do. We want to be able to enable you to effectively tell the story about needs that you have, and possibly we can use some ARPA funds to assist you with that. That is my presentation. I think it took about 3 minutes longer than yesterday, Andy. But we still have plenty of time for questions. And Andy has the microphone. Everybody will get a chance to ask questions. But if you want to raise your hand, Andy will start. The toughest one is the first. Getting you guys to stop talking once you've started is the tough part. But who wants to be the volunteer to ask the first question? Okay, good. And if you just give me your name, you don't have to tell me what organization you're with, but just I want this to be a conversation with everybody, and to the degree we can help each other would be great.
Hi, I'm Charles Williams. I'm on a board of a nonprofit, and I'm wondering, when you mention infrastructure versus operating expenses, infrastructure, is there a definition? Would that include like handicap accessibility projects?
Yeah, I think the term I used was capital or non-operating, and yes, I think it's all of the above. I was asked a question last night, would vehicles be eligible? Well, if it's used for the right purpose, if it's just to tool around your chief executive, I'd have a little issue with that. But if it's to transport clients, but I want to have conversations with how else can it be maximized, and that's where partnerships come in. We can do this or that. So handicap ramps, that's a capital item. It's not as heavy as a whole building, but it certainly would be eligible.
A whole building, if it was for a public project or a nonprofit organization, that would be part of the funds available, or?
Well, let me answer that question with what I told you I was going to give an answer on, and I didn't do it, and I apologize. Let me give you a couple of examples of the funds that were used, and help me out, Andy, if I miss one. We funded 6 projects this go around, the first go around. Boys and Girls Club was the largest recipient. That was towards their building. They have a $16 million project. The council awarded them $1.6 million. Far and away the largest grant of everything we did, exclusively for a building. Similarly, COTS, the Transitional Housing Organization, they received, I believe it was $300,000 for a $2.4 million project they had. Essentially, they bought one of Father Carr's buildings and used it for transitional housing. Again, for a building, not construction building, but purchase a building. So both. We assisted with the tiny homes project. We did not fund buildings per se. We actually funded the site work, because site work isn't a sexy thing to grant. We love unsexy things because you do those things and they get put into the ground. They're going to be there. That the grading and the stormwater we did there will stay with that site forever, or close to forever. Let's see, a couple others. The food co-op was an odd situation in which they didn't qualify for any federal funds because they were too new, and their timing of opening was just, very unfortunate. So we had given them a loan that we paid off. So it was really satisfying, something that they had a difficult time. If they had been open a little longer, they would have qualified for a loan and the feds would have paid for it. This way we did it, and the food co-op was able to do that. We gave a grant to ADVOCAP, and so this is a good contrast in different things, because one of the things the ADVOCAP grant did was leverage a significant amount of money for housing assistance, rental assistance, mortgage assistance. We did not want to get into that direct support to individuals, not direct, but we wanted individuals to benefit. We actually covered operating costs for ADVOCAP to hire people to take those applications, and so that was an operating cost example. But because there's significant, their leveraging of funds was phenomenal, and so we knew they were going to be able to make better use of getting these other rental assistance funds because we gave them money basically they could run more applications because they did it. Help me out, Andy. I know I'm missing one because I said 6.
Is it Christine Ann?
Christine Ann, it's right, our next door neighbor. So Christine Ann, they're purchasing the beach building and they're going to renovate that and everything, which we think is great. And that's towards their part of the building. And that was probably about 10%. So it's not a substantial part, but building improvements by precedent are clearly something that are there. But I don't want you to get scared away that, well, if I'm only asking for $10,000 and our smallest grant was $130, oh, I guess you only want to do big ones. No, that's all we did so far. You saw the criteria. If you meet those criteria, you're okay. We never said there's a minimum dollar amount. Capital is easier, but capital uses a lot more. But I can't do all. If I did only $10,000 grants, do the math. I'd have to do 235 grants. I don't have the administrative resources. Cammie would lose her mind with 235 agreements. So we need big and small. And operating, because of the short time frame we have, I think even though we only did one operating grant the first round, it's not entirely out of the realm of the possibility, but demonstrate how you're bridging to something, or there's an immediate need that you don't currently have the capacity for, and we'll help give you the capacity to help you and your clients get there. So, long answer to your question, but I wanted to make sure you guys had that.
And again, this is limited to nonprofit organizations, but are there other city funds, ARPA funds for profit organizations?
This is for non-infrastructure purposes. So I was asked a question last evening, could businesses apply? Technically, yes. But we have to take a look at what it's for. And there were a lot of businesses that were able to apply for other types of funds. And I said ARPA, but if they already applied for federal money and got federal money, that would probably, put them in a different category. The co-op's an example of a business that was ineligible for it. So that's why we did that, because a lot of other businesses in town were able to use other federal monies, but they were not, and that's why we went that way. So businesses are eligible in this, and it's as the one slide said, assist nonprofits and impacted industries. So technically, yes, but most of the people we're talking about these days are nonprofits or entities that are part of the city that are not infrastructure. There aren't a lot, but you notice a couple city employees here, so it's a little bit of both, but primarily nonprofits. And to date, all of our non-infrastructure ARPA monies have gone to nonprofits. Watch out for a city employee, it's like.
Yeah, and just let me say, I'm the liaison to the Friends of the Oshkosh Senior Center, so we're kind of unique, and I help them out finding funding.
You're all wonderfully unique in my eyes, so go ahead.
So, all right, this is a really tight turnaround to spend funds. I have a question. So we certainly can receive funds, but can we ask for a multi-year expenditure and provide like a reporting mechanism? And is that going to be frowned upon?
The short answer is yes, you may. Again,
Okay.
going back to that slide that says preference is given to, but that's why I gave the long explanation.
Yeah.
Please don't come back to me in January of '25 saying, oh, we need to change our scope of work. Please get that done before the window on changing the scope closes. So, but we're not opposed to allowing expenditures to occur in there, but we need to know you're going to do it.
Yeah, okay. Perfect. Thank you.
This is more of a comment. I'm Brandon. I work in the planning department, also staff liaison to the Sustainability Advisory Board. The comment I had was you brought up the strategic plan. I think it would be helpful for Annie maybe to show everybody at home and in the audience where they can find that.
I don't know if we have a graphic.
Probably don't have a graphic that we can access it here, but that's a good suggestion. But under, I think, government tab in our,
It's easy to find.
yeah, well, if Tom says it's easy to find, yeah. But it's under government tab in our website, there's a place for a strategic plan, and you can see that. But good suggestion, so, yeah, please look at it. Is it in there, Tricia?
Yeah, it's-
Hand Tricia the microphone. Well, this is a group sharing thing, so this is totally okay. This is what it's about. I want you to walk out of here understanding some of this stuff. So Tricia, please share with what you can.
If you have the grant funds piece that, the PDF that goes along with the application, it's linked in that portion, so you can link to all of those different pieces.
Thank you. Cammie already knew that because she put those links in there, but she was being quiet. But yeah, so there you go. We want you to understand these things. And to the degree you can't get an answer, you hit a dead end somewhere, that's why ARPA comments or the city MGR emails are both, you can ask questions there and we'll get back to you.
Logistical question, Mark. On the application, it states 750 words or less. I'm going to respect that. Will you guys be pretty firm about keeping it as concise as possible?
We want it concise in the application itself, but some of my favorite words on an application are "see attached," and that's only 2 words. So please tell us your story and give some depth to it. One applicant, I've already gotten some applications, just so you know. One application, they attached their organization's annual report. That's totally appropriate. You do not need to reinvent the wheel for us, folks. And if you say, it's part of our strategic plan, your organization's strategic plan, or it's part of our long-term plan, or see attached. I love see attached, and I will read them. I will stick around if you've got some more, direct questions that only pertain to your organization. I love the questions have been all very general oriented, which is great. And I'm happy to stick around. I can probably stick around a good half hour.
I know that we had a question submitted by email, and that was if a position could be partially funded by these funds.
The short answer is yes, but it's important to tell the story about why this position needs to be funded with this, in this situation. Again, are you trying to bridge your organization with a volume of demands that are being caused by what's happened with COVID? I've heard so many different stories. I've heard stories about mental health issues that have increased, and that's not a surprise to anybody in this room. One that's emerged to me has been teens. And it's amazing how I've heard stories about how teens are somehow falling through the cracks. Could part of it been because school was disrupted? Probably all of the above. But that was one that came out. So if you've got a program, if it's teens, we've got a group of kids that's, started in first grade that, are halfway through grade school already. Think about that. Through COVID, 4 years, those kids are halfway through grade school already. So they're halfway to being teenagers. And if you're a young parent, be very fearful. So we know that there's a gap that we may need to be filling. But you need to tell us the story. Don't assume. I'm trying to understand as much as I can, and you're trying to understand as much as you can. Don't assume we know. Tell us a story. Tell us about how you're trying to meet needs that we may not be as aware of as you are. Was this helpful? Because you guys are very quiet, so I was like, I just want to make sure. So, and I'm happy to stick around we spent a good time last night when we were done. Andy can answer some very general questions. Cammie can answer procedural questions, and I'll try. And if you want to talk to me something specific about your organization that you don't want to share with the group, I totally understand that, and I'm happy to talk about those too. But Brandon, go ahead.
Yeah, quick question. So if we are expecting a certain dollar amount, but then come to find out after a process that the dollar amount requested is maybe too much or not enough, at that so let's just say it's not enough, then is there the ability in July to potentially get more, or at that moment we would just have to figure out where we would find more funds? And then the reverse of that, let's say that what we're trying to do, it comes in at less dollars than what we're maybe anticipating, then we can simply just we can amend that agreement before 2024 and say, here's $10,000 back, or whatever the amount may be.
A lot of it depends, and part of that will be conversations that I'll have with some of you regarding your individual applications. Those will be things that we'll talk about. If we can only fund Y instead of X, is that going to change things? We can't do it at all. I mean, if you're using it to buy a vehicle, you can't buy half a vehicle. So it's you either get it or you have to find another funding source. This may take me another 3 months, Mark, to get the other funding, because you aren't funding, you ask for half of a vehicle, and I'm just using these as examples. And now you got to find 3/4 of the vehicles because I'm only giving you half. We have to work on that so that we can make sure that you're there, because if you can't do it, I may say, well, then we're going to move the allocation on, or I need a couple more months to do this. But with the time constraint, I need to be in regular contact with you, or my office needs to be in regular contact with you. I assure you, I delegate a lot. So you'll be hearing from somebody, not necessarily me, but we'll be working with you through that. There we go. Now we're warming up the group a little bit. Thank you.
Sure. I'm Lisa. My question is in regards to not duplicating requests of ARPA funds, which we'd have no problem doing, but there is a little angst. I'm fairly new to the whole grant writing side of things. We are anticipating being a recipient of Spirit Fund money. So should I not be greedy and apply, because then there are all these other organizations that maybe should be getting the City of Oshkosh ARPA funds? Or should I go ahead and apply and assume that's your job, you'll decide?
I think it's part of our job, we'll decide. It's about telling your story. Are you using it for the exact same program that you're getting Spirit funds for, or is it different? Well, you shook your head no, so just for the audience, but the answer is it depends. So if you've got Program A, you went to Spirit Fund, and Program B, you're coming here, that's part of your story. And this need is here and very real. I use teens as one example. And if you say, I'm doing this for teens, and another organization, I'm doing it for seniors, totally different programs, but both obviously, there's a lot of needs out there. So, don't shy away from applying, because I guarantee you'll get 100% of what you don't ask for. Yes. Oh, yeah. Microphone first. These guys yell at me if I let you start talking before that.
Thank you. So my question is about post-award. So say, for example, we were funded with like a couple staff positions through these funds, and there's turnover. Do we have to come to you and say, hey, it's not paying for this person's salary? Like, how strict are the budget lines within the grant? If it's within the same project, are we able to reallocate within that project?
We have agreements that I think, we're not going to get into the details of, this person left to go find themselves, and now you had to hire somebody new. That's your problem, not mine. Our agreements are generally pretty flexible. We wrote, our agreements are pretty standard. It's the attachment. That's why I love see attached. Our attachments are designed specifically for the applicant and their program in mind. If you were saying we're going to change from an employee to we're doing something different and you're changing the fundamental scope, that would be a problem. Please tell me before December 31 so we can amend it. Because once we lock in December 31, we're locked into whatever we agreed to. But the flexibility on, we're going to have this person or that person, that's pretty insignificant in my mind's eye.
Thank you.
We want to work with you because we know that the work you do is very fluid. I know that. That's the nature of nonprofits. The value you provide is you're extremely nimble. You're much more nimble than an organization like the city. I like to think we're nimble, but we're a 600-employee bureaucracy, and we know that. And we love ourselves, and we love the work we do, but we know what we are. And you guys do such a wonderful job of being flexible. And so that's why you exist, and that's why the council allocated funds for this purpose, for you to do the wonderful work you do because you can be flexible. But keep us in the loop. Anybody else? Well, this is about the same time we ended our last session, but we did stick around. So, I'm happy to stick around to answer questions. Like I said, Andy, if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them. But again, visit our hot topics for the evaluation information, FAQ in the application itself. And again, ARPA comments at oshkoshwi.gov, and somebody will get back to you if you have any questions. If you have over the weekend you have a sudden question that you forgot to ask today, please share it with us. And I want to thank you for coming, and it's sunny outside, so enjoy a sunny winter day.